Hi, David Agranoff here. I'm going to read a short story from my collection Amazing Punk Stories. I chose this story, Small World, because two of my friends, authors Anthony Trevino of King Space Void and Chad Stroup of Secrets of the Weird, had told me that this was their favorite story. So this is one take. I'm just gonna, if I screw up, we'll just keep going. And this story is called Small World. Mike wanted an old phone receiver to slam down. Hanging up in an angry fit wasn't what it used to be. He threw his cell phone into the sprawling Pennsylvania field. He needed to unleash his rage and decided to launch a combat booted foot into the large plastic trash can next to the pump. A voice boomed over the loudspeaker. "Pump 12, please don't kick the trash can." "Fuck you," Mike yelled. The pump stopped with a click. $62, it read. "Fuck you too," Mike yelled at the pump as he grabbed the receipt. He was going to make damn sure the record label paid for this one. When he was a young man, touring had been less expensive. Not that he had been sober enough to notice much. Now Mike shook with pent-up anger as he walked towards the Flying J truck stop's store to pay for the gas. He had been clean for a year now, but the last 3 months had been a real challenge. In 26 years of being in a band, this would be his first tour without any chemical assistance. It was the hardest thing he had done in his 43 years of life. He had made a commitment to being the kind of father that he had never had. And while sobriety felt more stable, more in control, it emphasized the downside of constant touring. Before, the whirlwind of groupies and blow had masked the tedium of the hours spent rammed into a van. Now the only release he found was when he called home to talk to his boy. It bothered Nina that he called after bedtime, but he did it anyways. Mike followed the hanging plastic arrows which pointed the way to the bathrooms. And in the bright fluorescent lights, he saw that he was coming to lose it. Tears hung just below the surface of a look of fury, spitting the image of Mike Gilliard Sr., his dad. That pushed him over some kind of edge. He went into a stall, locking the door, then dropped his face into his hands and wept. His face still handsome enough to have snared Nina, a beautiful Broadway wannabe waitress, 13 years his junior. The good looks were Pop's too. Mike wasn't sure if the condom had broken or they'd both been tripping too hard to remember one. Either way, they married quickly enough that there was no baby bump in the photos for the justice of the peace. The first few years had flowed smoothly enough. The band hadn't done much of anything. But following their Japanese reunion tour, Nina had demanded that Mike get clean by Scotty's fifth birthday. When he was 10 years old, Mike's mother gave him the "you're the man of the house now" speech. Every ounce of his anger was rooted in his father, who made sure to smack Mike and his mom around very, very well before draining the liquor cabinet one last time and then bolting forever. Now, because of one tiny line of coke backstage on that tour, Nina had left him. She packed up their Manhattan apartment and took Scotty back to his grandma's house in Syracuse. Already probably giving him his own man-of-the-house speech, Mike thought ruefully. And that hurt. Deeply. Like a missile fired straight at his heart. Mike reached into his leather jacket and felt the cool shape of the Glock 9mm in his pocket. No one in the band knew he was packing. His bandmates also thought that Mike had dropped the band off at the label's office in Philly. That he signed it back in and went back to being Mr. Family Man. Mike couldn't imagine life without Scotty and Nina. He couldn't imagine life without the band and drugs either. Don't forget the women, he thought. As he had been on tour, it had been a woman on tour that had first tempted him with junk. He contemplated the gun in his shaking hand, still unsure why he was driving towards Syracuse. Nina wouldn't take him back. She was too stubborn. If he went back to the band, he'd be dead in a week. Probably in bed with a screaming whore and a system full of junk. Mike did not want to be remembered that way. Holding the barrel to his temple, he felt tears begin to flow. He tried to muster the strength to pull the trigger. And then just then, the door of the next stall opened with a little squeak, and the labored breathing of a fat man, who then dropped his pants. The fat man sat down, letting out a sigh that sounded like an 18-wheeler releasing its air brakes. Mike held the shaking gun. The fat man grunted like he was giving birth, and a malicious odor, like a corpse on a hot day, filled the space. There was a mammoth plop, and then the man let out a sigh like he had just been given his first sip of a cold beer. Mike wanted to shoot the fucking turd birther. It couldn't end like this. He put the Glock back into the waistband of his skinny black jeans and stepped out and began rinsing his face as the turd birther struggled to push another stink out into the world. Mike hit the air dryer with his elbow, but he didn't wait. Dried his hands on his pants and he left the bathroom and went into the store. He decided that he might as well see it through. Talk to Nina. If he could make it that far, he'd be doing his duty as a father to try, whether she rejected him or not. All he needed was a Mountain Dew and then the last 3 hours of the drive. Mike went to the soda cooler, noting the steamed-up cooler door in front of him. It was the one he needed, so he waited. The door swung shut, and a young woman stepped back with a Mountain Dew bottle in each hand. Need one? Mike was speechless. She was lovely, with perfect long legs supporting a nice curvy figure. Her cherry red hair hung at the shoulders of a sleeveless Black Flag t-shirt. Do you need one? She repeated. Is my tongue on the floor? Mike thought, as he cleared his throat. Yeah, please. She handed him the soda, then walked off towards the counter. Mike wanted to tell her that his band toured with Flag back in the day, or anything that would stop her, but that would date him. He watched her as she disappeared around the corner. Then she turned to look back. Busted. But she smiled. With women like that left in the world, how could he be even thought about ending it all? Fuck Nina, he thought, retreating down the chip aisle to find the rest of his late-night driving fuel. He grabbed a bag of chili cheese Fritos, assuming he'd see the woman again at the register. But when he got in line, she was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps he had imagined her. He certainly would imagine her again. This is pathetic, Mike thought, as he roamed the parking lot, looking for any car with punk stickers. He just wanted one more look at her, but she was gone. Finally heading back to the van, Mike considered taking a nap and finishing the drive in the morning. It'll be 2 a.m. when I get there. He reckoned out loud. Make it to Syracuse first. After setting his dew in the drink holder and positioning the chips for easy reach, Mike turned the key and headed for I-81 North. The lights spun onto the ramp as he pressed his foot on the gas. At first, Mike thought it was a mirage from his mind. Too good to be true. But there she was, walking on the side of the road with a backpack. She turned, looked into his lights, and lifted her thumb. Even better. Mike slowed, wishing he was driving less of a serial killer-looking like vehicle. She stepped back, giving the van room to pull in beside her. Mike hit the button, rolling down the passenger side window. Need a ride? She stood on her tiptoes to look in, noticing the loft and the band equipment, breathing a sigh of relief. Maybe. Where's the rest of your band? Tour's over. I'm heading home. She nodded, thinking it over. Mike tried to come up with something that would put her mind at ease. Where are you headed? Even if she wasn't interested in him, Mike hoped she'd take the ride. He could use some company. Mike knew he was a charming guy. He just needed her to think so. Buffalo, she finally told him. Her hair blew gently in the spring wind. I can take you as far as Syracuse. Hop on in. She thought about it. Awesome. I'm Zoe. She opened the door, placing her pack on the floor before sitting down. I'm Mick. Mike told her his stage name, offering a hand to shake. Zoe's hands were soft. Mike almost hit the automatic lock, but thought better of freaking her out. Mike rolled up the window, pulling the van out onto the highway. She pulled out her smartphone, the way all young people did. Like his 17-year-old nephew, Andy, who was constantly thumb-typing and barely in the same room. Maybe she wouldn't be such great company after all. Zoe or Zoe? Mike repeated. Her eyes stayed on the light of the small screen. Zoe. Yeah, I was kind of hoping it was you. This was new. Really? Zoe smiled, keeping her eyes on the phone. Old punk dude is way better than creepy trucker. He looked wounded, but laughed. Old? I'm not exactly AARP yet. She bit her lip. I'm sorry, that was rude, right? No, I mean, you're cool and everything. Mike sighed. It's okay. At that, Zoe smiled and went back to updating her Facebook status. For the next 10 minutes, she ignored him. Every so often, Mike would turn and see her perfect profile lit by the cold blue-white light of the phone's touchscreen. After they were both silent for about that long, he hit play on the CD player and gave screaming life to Circle Jerk's Wild in the Streets, the first song on the mix. Right the fuck on! Zoe slid her phone in her pocket, singing along with every word. Mike smiled. You like the old stuff? It wasn't a question, more of an observation. Zoe nodded. My mom had a lot of it. Even when she was totally Biff and Buffy bullshit yuppie, I found it all and saved it. Some of those old SST records, 12-inch compilations from the 80s, are worth some bucks, but I would never sell them. Mike pounded his chest. Punk till I fucking die. Right on. Zoe looked around at the back of the van again. You never told me the name of your band. Mike didn't know Zoe's age yet, and since she liked the old stuff, there was a chance she had heard of Dead Pigs. But it would be better to probably lie. A stabbing death fell out of his mouth before he could curse himself for naming those amateurs. Old school. We sound like Flag. We even cover Six Pack. The last part was true. Somewhat of a point of pride. Their sound came together on a cover like that. Rad. Zoe smiled and grooved to the next song. Fortunate Son, another cover. I wouldn't be so hard on your mom, I guess. But when I was young, it was just us. Without her, I would have never discovered punk in the first place. She sounded like his nephew when she spoke. Though she looked old enough, Mike's auxiliary brain, the one not located in his skull, made the decision before he could reel the words back into his mouth. How old are you? Zoe looked at him, suddenly serious. Never ask a lady her age. Why does it matter anyways? Mike's face was burning. He shook his head. Forget about it. It doesn't matter. Zoe laughed, reaching in her pocket and produced an ID from the University of Maryland. I swear on Joey Ramone's grave, old boy, I'm 19. Just trying to shuffle back to Buffalo and surprise the shit out of my friends for the summer break. Mike did the math in his head. 19 years ago, Dead Pigs were touring on their second album. A lot had happened to him since then, but this young woman was legal. Fuck Nina and her head games. He had been a good husband to her. What was one line of coke? If she wanted to leave him, he deserved this opportunity. To think he had almost snuffed it earlier. Now look what had fallen to his lap. Mike never really believed in God, but maybe something out there was looking out for him. He'd always been a good-looking guy. Punk didn't bring in the checks like a straight rock band, but he didn't want those gigs anyways. For more than an hour, Mike and Zoe talked about the music scene. Mike was careful not to go too far back with his own war stories from touring, but he could tell that Zoe was impressed. They just passed the New York state line, and he saw a sign for a rest area. He had to piss and make his move, probably in that order. A few minutes later, Mike stood at a urinal with his dick in his hand. His phone buzzed in his pocket. An hour previously, he would have jumped at the ring, hoping it was Nina begging for forgiveness, begging him to let Scotty and her come back to the city. but it was just as likely that it would have been Billy from the studio, from the label, wondering where the hell their van rental was. Mike zipped up, walked over, and washed his hands at the nasty sink. Walking back out to the cool spring breeze, he looked at his phone. Nina calling. When he looked up, Zoe's legs hung out of the van's... Excuse me. When he looked up, Zoe's legs hung out of the van's side door. An hour of tour stories later, he'd finally loosened up and kept the damn phone in her pocket. She had kept the phone in her pocket. Before they parted ways, just previously, she smiled at him. Years on the road had taught Mike the nuances of that kind of smile. It was the same smile that Nina gave him before they snuck out to that disgusting club bathroom where everything got started. Where the filth didn't even matter because Nina was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She might still be, but Zoe was burning hot. Nina could wait till morning. Mike put the phone back in his pocket, thinking of the often quoted aphorism from their drummer Louie, "There's always a hotter bitch." He walked back to the van, noticing that Zoe was typing on her phone again. When she saw him, she turned it off, grabbing her backpack and holding it in her lap. Pushing some of her red hair behind her ear, Zoe gave him a devious smile. "I was saving this, but if you're not in a hurry, you want to get fucked up?" Mike looked around the deserted rest area. A truck was parked on the opposite side. The light was off in the sleeper cab. "Don't want to wake up the bandit, but we could find somewhere less populated." He smiled at her, and Zoe held up 2 loaded syringes. "Ride for a ride?" The next exit was a state forest to the east. With a few gas stations to the west, Mike turned on a logging road. Mike turned onto a logging road and followed that back for about 1.5 miles, far enough that they couldn't be seen from the road. "Wicked," Zoe pronounced as Mike killed the motor and dropped his leather jacket onto the floor. The Glock in his pocket thudded when it hit, but his attention was on Zoe. The only light came from her pulling up music on her smartphone, something newer that Mike didn't know. The forest mostly blocked the moonlight, but Mike's eyes adjusted to the light. Zoe held a mini mag light in her mouth and pointed at her arm. She was tying off a plastic band just above her elbow. She was tapped for a vein, looking down a few times. Mike's cock was already rock hard, watching her expertly prepare herself. He had worked hard to get clean and knew he was dangerously close to the point of no return. Zoe pushed the needle into a big blue vein in her arm and sighed with satisfaction, and then spit out the light. Mike picked it up, shining it on her. She hadn't shot up the junk yet. "Something wrong?" "Nothing," he lied. He was scared shitless of the needle after all this time. "Come here," Zoe whispered. "Push it in." She rubbed his pant leg with her bare foot. His cock grew hard as a plank. Aching, her full, soft lips moved closer to his ear. "Do it." Mike pushed the plunger home, moving up against Zoe in the process. She moaned, arching her back in pleasure, nipples grazing the fabric of his shirt. He wanted to tear her shirt off, but he kissed her mouth, her full mouth instead. Her body was vibrating softly. He could feel her high radiating from her. Zoe laid back on the cushion of the loft, eyes shut tight, listening down to herself after the shot. The other syringe was capped, resting in her cleavage, visible in the faint dome light from the loft. Mike climbed on top of her, crawling towards liquid joy. The bulge in his jeans rubbed against her skirt. She moaned softly, protesting nothing. Mike pushed her shirt over her head, rubbing his lips against the black lace of her bra. Removing the syringe with his teeth, he still ground against her skirt. "Shoot it," Zoe whispered. He was unsure which he wanted first, the smack or her. No plastic band was necessary. Mike was an expert. Even in the dark, after all this time, it took only a few seconds to find his favorite vein. Mike pushed the needle into his arm and rammed the plunger. Instant comfort. The flash of Scotty, his boy, his little boy calling him daddy for the first time. He had wanted to make that work. So bad. So bad. Zoe frowned. "Let me make you feel better." Her sexy murmur wasn't what made him forget. She pushed the plunger down for him with her thumb. Joy washed over him like a tide soaking a beach. For a few minutes, Mike rode that wave. Zoe turned up the phone's volume too loud, louder than the tiny speakers were designed to handle. Mike's vision was distorted under the junk, but he could see Zoe shaking her hips to the beat. He was getting uncomfortably hard. He unbuttoned his pants and pushed them down. "Well, hello, Mr. Cox," Zoe laughed, mock saluting. He pulled her closer, and she smiled, running her fingers through his gray speckled hair. They kissed as he pushed her bra strap down off her shoulder, kissing her neck in disbelief at the softness of her skin. Reaching under her bra with both hands, Mike pushed it off. Zoe pushed his pants further down with her foot, lifting her ass just enough so he could slide her skirt down. He pulled her panties and skirt in one grab, and she sat up. "Lay down, Mick." The condom was out of her backpack and unwrapped before he could blink 3 times. "I'm fixed, baby. It's really important to me." Of course, darling. Whatever you want. Just fuck me already," he thought. Zoe slid the condom on, and Mike slid it inside her. They moved together in perfect rhythm. Zoe kept leaning back, looking away. Mike held firm to her hips, trying to move deeper. "Do you like me, Mick?" she breathed. His toes were tingling. Yeah, I do." "Am I the best you ever had?" He was fighting the urge to come even then. No reason to lie. "Oh yeah, you're so fucking hot." Suddenly she moved faster against him. Mike felt himself ready to burst. "Oh, Mike, call me baby." He did, several times, less distinctly as he came. He whispered it into her ear. He never even noticed that she had called him by his real name. "Mountain Dew?" Mike opened his eyes to see Zoe holding the dew bottle with a small gulp of warm soda and backwash. The sun was heating the outer skin of the van. Mike was dried out and cotton-mouthed enough to drink the gross soda and want more. Zoe was back in her clothes. He wasn't. The only thing he wore was the wet condom on his shriveled cock. He pulled it off, squealing as he took a chunk of pubic hair with it and slopped it onto the floor of the van. Zoe laughed with pleasure. Mike noted that she looked just as hot the morning after. Leaning back on the loft, he tapped the empty spot next to him. But she didn't move from the loft's far edge, looking impatient. She probably wanted to get on to Buffalo, but Mike wanted to bask in the moment, enjoy it. Zoe was holding her phone. "Kind of funny last night." "Funny good?" Before she could answer, Mike heard his phone ringing in his jacket. He gave it a look. Shit. He had let Scotty down again. The boy needed a family man, a father. He should have never fucked this chick. He should have been calling Nina back, begging her to take him back. Not the other way around. The year before, while he was still using, Mike's mom begged him on her deathbed to be a good father. "You know, Mike, nothing is more important than being daddy." "Apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, huh?" "What?" Mike asked, absently fumbling for his clothes. My bio dad. My real dad. He was a rocker. He fucked my mom on tour in a tour van in 1990. The clothes couldn't have gone far. Mike stopped looking, but they were missing. Where the fuck were his clothes? Wait, where are you from? Zoe smiled. I told you. Buffalo. When Mike thought about Buffalo in 1990, something twisted in his guts. He couldn't look at her and ask. He just closed his eyes. What's your last name? Please, God, don't say Wilson. Don't say Wilson. Stacy Wilson had been his stalker. After one awkward fuck in a van outside of a Buffalo VFW hall, there had been several years' worth of threatening letters of all kinds of vague, non-specific nature. She had said she had amazing news and kept begging him to be with her. Mike had steered the band away from Western New York ever since then. Zoe cleared her throat. Didn't she read my ID? Pulling on his leather jacket, Mike finally gave up on finding his pants. He only glanced at it. Zoe smiled again. So, anyways, my bio dad, he toured with Black Flag too. How funny. His band was called Dead Pigs. Have you ever heard of them? Mike couldn't look at Zoe. Being daddy's more important than anything. His mom's voice and Nina repeating it rang in his head, over and over like a hellish chorus. Zoe held up her phone, showing a picture of his sleeping face. I just posted this to Facebook. He screamed, pushing her out of the way, pulling the jacket futilely around his mostly nude self. He fell out of the passenger door into the dirt, looking around at nothing but woods. He felt ready to run as far as he could. Zoe was looking up at him, following. What's wrong, baby? When he ran, the gravel road tore up his bare feet. Baby, come back. We can be together. Mike whirled. No, don't call me that. What? Call you what? Baby? No. Mike, please, calm down. As he withdrew the pistol and her eyes widened, he thought he saw the resemblance. The sound of the gun was very loud. Zoe looked back beyond the trees into the clear sky, holding the phone to her ear. Stacy, I need a pickup. The voice in the phone sounded almost frantic. Did he believe you? Zoe looked at Mike's almost naked, nearly headless body lying in the ditch and laughed. Yeah, I'd say he bought it. Too bad, too, she thought. Kind of liked Mike. But I owe Stacy. I really needed that money. So that's Small World. Hope you liked it.